Today I'm joined by Corrie's Luca Toolan, who bowed out of the show last week after some intense scenes that saw bad boy Mason Radcliffe getting stabbed. Today we're going to be talking about his year and a half on the cobbles, including filming those final scenes, working with the Benincasa Trust, and viewer reaction to last year's bullying storyline. Luca, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me on, Michael.
No worries, it is lovely to speak to you. I mean, it hasn't wasn't last week's episode brilliant? It seems to have met near universal acclaim, hasn't it? You must be pretty pleased with the reaction it's got.
I'm buzzing. I'm absolutely buzzing. I didn't anticipate it whatsoever. I think when you're filming these sorts of things, you can often feel like you're in a bit of a bubble, and then it comes out and it's like, oh, people are actually watching this.
Yeah.
I didn't anticipate it, but it's been lovely. Everyone's been really receptive to it and really supportive. So yeah.
How was the concept of the episode explained to you? In particular, what if there hadn't been a knife part where Mason survives? What were you told about that?
Well, Kate Brooks, oh no, sorry, Verity, it was Verity at the time,
Hmm.
sat me down maybe in March time, and told me, look, she said, look, I'm going to be very candid, I'm going to be very straight, we're killing you off. And the what followed from that was an explanation of a rough idea and a concept that they had. Obviously, the script hadn't been fully completed yet, but that um, they wanted to do like a sliding doors sort of.
Right.
Have you seen the movie Sliding Doors?
I know of it. I can't remember whether I've seen it or not.
Yeah, it's one of it. Basically, it shows a life of a character that misses their tube or their tram or whatever, and what would happen if they did get on that train, and what would happen if they didn't get on that train, and essentially they catch their partner cheating, and it just completely changes the course of life. So they wanted to sort of reflect something like that. In that, that you could see how Mason's life would evolve and would it would continue had the knife not been present.
Hmm.
But the big emphasis that we had around this episode was not to f make people fearful, but rather to just show them for themselves and display it in a way that was kind of striking and surprising instead of fear mongering.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the biggest surprise, I suppose, was we see that there was no knife version, and then Mason gets in the car and Abby's there, and he's like, "Oh, what's going?" Was it partially supposed to be like a dream of Mason's as well as?
That was it. They called it the dream sequence. So when we were
Yeah.
filming, that was what it was labeled on the scripts, dream sequence. So I don't know what happens when you die, but I'm guessing the or when you're dying. But yeah, Did you clock straight? What was your initial
Well,
idea?
I was a bit confused because I went into the episode thinking, oh, I think Mason's gonna die. I don't think he's coming out of this. And I'd seen one of the publicity pictures with Abby next to you and all the blood everywhere. And I was like, oh, what's going on? He seems like everything's okay. And I thought, is it gonna happen later? And then when Abby turns up, I was like, oh. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. I loved it. But
Mhm.
I wasn't sure until yeah, that Abby turned up, and then we get to see it again, and all the fast forwarding in Dylan's room and all that kind of bit.
Yeah, yeah. Did it clock straight away though, or was it something that you had to think about?
I definitely had to think about it.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, I'd seen some people online saying, "Oh, I think this is what it was," and I think that's what it was. At first, I was thinking, "Oh, it was just a dream," and then other people kind of talked to me about. I kind of took it as a alternate version. I was like, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense." So it was good that it made you think.
Yeah, yeah. For me, my favorite types of film is those thought-provoking films.
Mm,
Like Shutter Island is one of my favorite films. I don't know if you
yes.
watched Shutter
Yeah,
Island.
yeah, yeah.
Where it's that final moment with Leonardo DiCaprio where it's that line. Is it better to I've forgotten the line. It's a very famous line, but essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but it's along the lines of, "Is it better to live a life as a man that knows he's done evil, or a man, or die not knowing, or something like that?" Anyway, it makes you think. It really makes you think. Was this entire segment his reality, and did he understand it, or was he actually crazy? And that's that sort of stuff I love. I love that sort of
It's the
stuff.
sort of films that you would immediately want to watch again. And as soon as
Yeah,
I watched last Monday's Corrie, I was like, we need to watch that again and see if I watch it differently the next time.
yeah. And then hop on Reddit after and like search up theories and yeah, I
Exactly,
love all that.
exactly. Yeah, in that stance, it did its job. Did you have a favorite moment in that episode to film?
Um, yeah, I think the actual scenes when Abby's Sally's next to me and I'm dying, and I think that for me was my favorite part of filming. I don't know, maybe that might be surprising to you because it's completely graphic and requires a lot of energy and effort to do. But you know, with them sorts of scenes, you can just there's so much focus and energy required that you kind of almost forget that you're acting. And there's blood, the people around you, and I don't know. In some instances, those types of scenes are easier than your everyday scenes because I was so focused. I was so locked in. I'd done all my preparation. I'd worked really hard on research, on, you know, just getting to that point and just being locked in that it's that's what I think a lot of actors chase is that moment where you're in it. And that for me was that moment.
What sort of research did you do to prepare for it then?
I watched pretty much every film, stabbing, death that there is on the internet. Every essentially in the script it said I had a hypophone collapsed lung.
Yeah.
Collapsed lung. I don't know the medical term, but it said that, and I had to find that out. And I was just Googling every single just every scene in any movie with a collapsed lung.
Mm.
And then the Saving Private Ryan clip came up, and I'm rubbish with names, but essentially it was Private Ryan clip, and he gets shot, and it goes through his spine. And I took a lot of inspiration from that, and then also just Googling online, what's it like to be stabbed, which is my search history must have been so
And what a
strange.
day that must have been.
Yeah, yeah. But like, what's it like to have a collapse lung? Just as much info as you can get from the internet.
Well, I mean, it came across as very realistic to me. I mean, can you also that I mean the makeup as well? I'd be kind of interested to know what went into that in terms of the stab wound, the blood. I guess going pale as well. Can you
Yeah.
talk a bit about that?
Yeah, well, they're so good. It was Helen and Lorraine mainly on it from Corrie Makeup, and they're just epic, so talented. There's this so the stab wound that you see, it's weird to explain. It's like a gelatine. So it's a raised platform of gelatine that makes it look like your skin is elevated. So then they paint over it like your skin tone. And then there's a slit inside it that gives it that depth. So essentially, it's just a raised piece of gelatine over your skin that they've cut into and then shaded like and colored round. So yeah, that looked mega. And then the blood they had to apply and then the markings, yeah, it was all so good, and they put so much time and energy and effort into it, and without it, it wouldn't have looked half as good.
Yeah, no, it was excellent. It was excellent. So you spoke earlier about last year and Verity McLeod, the producer, telling you that this is where things were going for you. Did you see that more as an end to Mason, or was it more of an extension? Because I don't know when you first came in whether it was just supposed to be for the original bullying storyline and then you got a bit more, or how did you see it?
I saw it as an end to Mason. I think initially it was a 3 month contract with options for extension.
Mm.
And then that turned into uh yeah, they extended all options at that point. And then I started filming other stuff that so yeah, if it was in March, what would I have been March, April? I would have been filming. Yeah, it was I don't know, it was I was starting to hear that I was gonna get a redemption.
Yeah.
So I went into that meeting not really thinking too much of it, and then just thinking that I was going to become a regular, and then that was the plan, and then Yeah, no, it was quite a shock, but a pleasant one to be honest with you. I think they told me how much energy and emphasis and research and what they were doing, and I loved it straight away. I thought it was genius to do it in that way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
It's
a pleasant
definitely kind
surprise.
of a what a way to go exit, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was just grateful that they were going to give me that instead of just a taxi or whatever.
How much influence did Kate Brooks, the new producer, have on the direction of the final episodes? Because I know that, she was producer by the time the episodes came out. So how much of it would you say was her kind of vision?
Um, I'm not sure. I think she's like super talented in her own way. I think you don't obviously get to see behind the scenes because the point at which I was talking with Verity, it was still in its early stages of development, that script. So I'd imagine she would have had a lot to do with it. And it was, I don't know, maybe it was a collaboration of the two people. But I do think that she chose the director, Jordan Hogg. So there was definitely, yeah, she definitely had an influence over it for sure.
How hard was it to keep it a secret that Mason had died? Because even Coronation Street, they'd said Mason's going to be stabbed if you read the spoiler.
Yeah,
You didn't know for sure that it was the end for you. Yeah, was that tricky to keep it a secret?
yeah, of course, because I had people, friends, family, like texting me on the day, like, what? Because I was so desperate for it to be kept a secret because to have as much impact as it was. So yeah, I had people calling me, texting me like, why did you not tell me? Like even really close to me. You gotta do it. You gotta do it. It's tough. It would slip up a few times in convo. But yeah, I managed.
One of the things I really liked about the story is how it showed in the aftermath of the attack. You got these different characters blaming themselves for what happened. Most notably, you got Dylan and little Joseph as well. Do you think that that's important to show that it was a combination of factors that led to Mason's death and having the characters reflect on what they all could have done differently?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also it extends to reality in that you can see actually the ramifications of what a knife crime, what a stabbing can look like. You see it on the news, lads killed, but you don't really typically see the ripple effect that has on a community, on friends, on family, people taking blame, people feeling guilty. And then also I think they did it excellently with Liam, like the angle they took and the pressure and all of that, because that's who we're targeting. We're never really gonna get bona fide gangsters to drop knives. That's slightly unrealistic. It's
Yeah.
it's more directed at kids, younger adults, that are carrying out of fear, that are carrying because of peer pressure. So yeah, I think it targeted what it set out to do very well.
Mm. And how did the Benincasa Trust help in preparing you for the whole of the storyline?
Well, yeah, very early on, they told us, what to expect. They told us how to do it, what sort of way, what angle to take on it, and they influenced us a lot with the script as well on not fear mongering and exacerbating the problem that's currently at hand. Real life instances, so what it looks like in reality, and examples of that and what happens, and just it strikes at home, doesn't it? Because you're speaking to people that dealing with it day in day out, so it brings you to reality. It's not just telly; it's reality.
Mm. You spoke earlier about targeting more of the younger viewers and trying to put them off feeling that they need a knife for protection. And I noticed that the bullying storyline, and particularly last year, really did capture the interest of quite a lot of the young ones on TikTok, didn't they? A lot of the stuff really blew up there.
Yeah, yeah. I think TikTok is a massive platform, social media in general, TikTok especially. It blew up on TikTok and had kids talking, and sort of put Corrie on the map for a lot of youngsters, which was great, and spread a great message. I think it's so powerful. These social media apps, especially TikTok, how quickly it can gain traction. It's mental, and I think it's a good tool that Corrie are using nowadays.
Mhm. I don't usually go on TikTok. I think I'm a bit too old for that. But I did venture onto yours over the weekend, and I was really loved all the stuff that you posted there over the past year and a half or so about Corrie. How important has it been for you, just with all of your Mason stuff during your
Yeah.
journey to Coronation Street to share it with the fans?
Yeah, of course, because it shows a human, that with a soap and a show like Corrie, people can struggle to distinguish between character and human. And I think to have that outlet to reach out to people that are watching the show and show them that I'm not a bully that pulls knives on people was nice. It was nice for me. It's good to build your platform. Hopefully will maybe aid me in getting further jobs,
Mm.
casting don't look dimly on having a platform. And it was fun. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun to post little videos like that.
Yeah. Have you been recognized much out in the real world as Mason?
Yeah, 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 and strangely by a lot of younger people,
Oh yeah.
which just that I didn't anticipate that going into to Corrie to have so many young people coming up and saying hello.
Is it a hello or is it oh Mason, you're horrible?
Do you know what, Michael? In real life, it's 99% good.
Good.
You get the odd one,
Yeah.
but it's never it's like 99 out of 100 where it's nice.
I think that with a lot of the actors being on social media now, I think people get a lot more now than maybe people did in the past that you're not your character.
Yeah, 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 definitely, definitely.
I want to talk a little bit about Betsy because it seemed like there was really some sparks flying between her and Mason in the weeks leading up to his death. So, what was it like working with Sydney Martin and Vicky Myers? And do you think that if the stabbing hadn't happened, Mason would have been welcomed eventually into the family dynamic there?
100%. He would have slid right in there. He would have had his feet up. He would have been making dinner at the Swains. It was fun. I really enjoyed them scenes because there was one scene in particular with Vicky Myers and Ali King and Sydney at the bistro, which them sorts of scenes they felt it didn't feel like it does a different energy to them. It was really nice to bounce off those other actors. I think they're all very, very talented in their own right, and the better actor you work with, the better it makes you perform. Or so I've found anyway. So it was really nice to play with them scenes. The chemistry me and Sydney's great. And yeah, I learned a lot off Vicky as a human and actor.
Nice. How do you think that the death of Mason is going to affect Betsy in the long term? And I guess the blossoming romance between Lisa and Carla.
Um, well, I know how it affects the long term, so I won't spoil it.
Ah. You've been told a
But
bit further than your stories.
well, that's only through Sydney directly. But from what I've seen so far, she's distraught. She's always been a loose cannon, really, hasn't she? And I think she's not the most stable of characters, so you can anticipate that something this tragic is going to maybe cause her to act out of character or act in character, maybe you could say, and do crazy things. Who knows? Who knows?
Speaking of Sydney, it seems like you really made some really close friends with some of the other actors on Coronation Street there. Was it hard saying goodbye to them at the end?
Of course it was, yeah, of course. It was a nice send off though. It was a really lovely send off.
What did they do?
I finished my last scene that was completely unrelated to the stabbing. And I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think anyone would come down because I'd finished the last stabbing scene,
Hmm.
the last big scene of that block, and it was just very anticlimactic. It was just, oh, right, that's a wrap. Bye, guys. And then, so that for me, that was my goodbye. And then we did some completely unrelated last scene that I wasn't even speaking in, and they came down. The producer, Sydney, Liam, Charlie, flowers, champagne, a card, said lovely like hugs, messages, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was nice. It was nice.
Speaking of goodbyes as well, I thought it was really interesting to see Mason getting involved in Stu's exit storyline and the scenes
Mm.
he had at the speed dial. What was it like working there and with Bill and Shelley?
Yeah, do you know what? Those two as humans are flipping incredible. They are they're just characters in their own right, and I think off screen, arguably the dynamic they have is better than on screen. It's hilarious. It's like two married old couples. It was funny working. Bill's a great guy. I love him to bits. He really taught me a lot, and Shelley did too. She's just so funny. So
She
is Bill in their own right. I just couldn't stop cracking up. It was a really fun period that filming.
Mm. And I think having Mason take up with those two was where we started to see the first signs of this redemption arc that you talked
Mm.
about earlier, wasn't it? How did you approach his softer side and changing how the viewers felt about him?
Well, I tried my best to not make it a personality transplant because I know that sometimes that can happen in soap, and I tried to play it in a way that was, it was a harder egg to crack
Mm.
with Mason, and I think I played that nicely with Betsy over the time. It took me a while to warm to her, and really be vulnerable with her. But I think in regards to those two, it was a little bit quicker because I felt safer. Um, but just I don't know. You get to show more of yourself in that sense. There's less acting to do, and it's more just about trying to show what's underneath.
Yeah, sure, sure. I think probably the scenes with the Metcalfs were like the final turning point, weren't they? When he was totally relaxed and just having fun and enjoying being welcomed into a normal, loving family.
Yeah, they were so wholesome, man. I love doing them scenes as well. Sally, and Johnny Wood. They were so yeah, they were so nice to work with. Honestly, they were. They're just Sally's an absolute sweetheart. It was just yeah, they were a pleasure to do.
Scrolling right back, so when you first started playing Mason back in 2023, did you see him as a character with a lot of depth, or was he just kind of token bully at the beginning who then grew over time?
Well, he was, wasn't he? He was just token bully for a lot of the time. I was desperately trying to cram in some essence of humanity, some three-dimensional, but I really struggled because the scenes just didn't lend to that at all. And I think it's my first time on camera. Um, you know, I was a lot more nervous during them scenes. I didn't really, there's a lot of technicalities that I was focusing on, so I didn't really play with it as much as I would have liked to. It was two-dimensional. But they offered me the second shot at exploring the character further, so I guess I had my chance to do that.
When did you start to learn a bit more about his background and his family then?
It would have been after, well, yeah, about sort of you just sort of hear whispers as to what's going on,
Hmm.
and then you finally have that meeting, and then that same meeting where I found out I was getting killed off was sort of
Right.
that's when it all came to light.
Yeah. And then this is when we then met his brothers, didn't we? These scenes with Matty and Logan, they were really intense as well. Did you do much prep work with the guys playing them to try and make the history between them seem realistic and antagonistic?
Yeah, we did bits and bobs. It was great working with them too. They were not afraid to get stuck in. There was a real tenacity about what they were doing, and it was good. We kind of tried to push boundaries. Yeah, it was just really really good time. I just really enjoyed it.
Why do you think that Mason ended up being Matty and Logan's punch bag rather than just being like the third member of their little gang?
Because there's no redemption if he is.
Mm.
I think it's a very powerful tool to get viewers to sympathize with him. There's no redemption if that happens, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I found it interesting that the character of Matty actually made his very first appearance on the show only like a couple of weeks after you back in late 2023, but
Yeah,
we didn't know that was
yeah,
his brother. I guess at
yeah,
the
yeah.
time that was never the plan that he was going to be your brother, was it?
No, no, absolutely not. But they work these things in.
Yeah. It seemed really clear in the last episode, even though Mason's brothers really wanted to hurt him, the actual stabbing was kind of an accident on Logan's part. Do you think they
Yeah.
would have ever actually killed him purposefully?
Uh, no, I don't think they would have. In their face, I think their face says it all. When the knife goes in, it's one of shock, and they're they're thugs, but they ain't murderers. Is that's well, I essentially say that to DS Swain when she confronts me about the murder of her partner,
Yeah,
and I'm saying, look, they're not murderers. Like they wouldn't they like they're idiots, but they're not murderers. So that's what that character's Mason's character's perception would be.
yeah. You spoke earlier about your final scene that you filmed was the I think in the Met Cast.
Yeah.
We actually the last time we get to see you was so far at least. I don't know if there's more. Was that scene where Abby's having her vision and you're there in the gardens with the heather? That was
Yeah.
spooky. Did you was that just kind of filmed at the same time as the other garden scenes that you were in?
Uh, no, that was after. That
Was
was after. Yeah. Oh no, no, sorry, forgive me. That was before. That was
Oh,
before it all kicked off. Yeah, that was before I died. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So that was just a bit. I just had to stand there and look like a ghost, really. So.
I mean, that's been happening quite a lot on Coronation Street recently, hasn't it? You know, Paul's come back as a vision or a dream. Richard Hillman at Christmas.
Yeah,
At
yeah.
least
They
you know
like
it's
they
not
like.
the end now if you die on Coronation Street.
Yeah, there's no realms of things that cannot come into existence on that show. It keeps you on your toes. It's I like it because I'm back in, I'm working, and it's an extra episode. And I don't know what viewers feel, but I like it.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the most heartbreaking moments in that final episode for me was when Mason was asking for his mum. Were you actually told anything about his parents, or was it just, oh, I just want my mum?
Yeah, there's a lot of filling in the gaps you kind of have to do. The yeah, there wasn't much I had to really go off other than the fact that I was going back for pictures of her. So that's why I go back to, and that's why I get caught is because there's pictures of her at the flat that I want to retrieve before I go to Germany. So for me, you're always looking for clues like that. Obviously, the relationship wasn't great, but I don't know. She could have died. She could have passed away. She could have, who knows?
Yeah,
But she clearly meant something.
clearly, yeah. Going back to the beginning of it all, then, can you tell me a bit about your background as an actor and how it all started for you and how you then kind of progressed onto appearing in Corrie?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So um, I was doing my A levels.
Mhm.
And I'd always wanted to do acting, and I never had the courage to step onto a stage or do anything like that. And my sister was doing acting at the time. She wanted to quit the acting class. And I
Mhm.
said, look, I will come with you to the acting class to spur you on to keep you there. And then I did it, and it was like, all right, I'm staying here. She left the acting class. I stayed on at that acting class.
Mhm.
And then that would have been 2021. And then I was in my second year of A levels, and I said I'd been doing the classes for maybe 6, 7 months. And I said, this is what I want to do. I don't want to get a proper job after A levels. So I did my A levels. I studied for them just to make my parents hard, but I was walking into that exam hall like just not a single nerve in my body, just knowing that uni wasn't for me. I do not want to do it. I just fell in love with it as soon as I did it. Then I got an agent and started auditioning properly in 2022. um was it 20, yeah, 2022, the back end of 2022. Then 2023 came around. Yeah, so it was about a year. It was pretty much bang on a year of having an agent, and then I landed Corrie. So in between that, I was just going to acting classes once or twice a week, 3 times a week, and then just studying and then doing student films. So literally anything I could do to get in front of a camera, get on a stage. I was doing the worst jobs you can imagine. Like Michael, I was in the pits, I was in the slum. I've got stories that like just unbelievable, like 16, 17 hour days on student films. Um, like in the freezing cold, but it made it nice, you know.
Mm.
It's part of that, the romantic struggling artist sort of thing.
Yeah, it's just so quick, isn't it? You know, starting the classes in 2021 and then 2 years later, there you are.
Yeah,
I mean, shows you
yeah.
worked hard for it, doesn't it? I guess.
Yeah, it does, but I'm not naive to to how lucky I am to have achieved something that quickly. I'm well aware. I was in classes speaking to actors all the time, you know, good actors that hadn't had a break like that in years and years and years. So, you know, hard work, of course, but I completely, you know, grateful and recognizing of what a feat that is to do that quickly.
I saw on YouTube another thing that you did. What was it? Seven stages, was it called? A little short film.
Oh, flipping hell.
You were a bit of a bad
Flipping
boy in
hell.
that as well, weren't you? So maybe that's what helped get you the
I
part.
don't know. Yeah, yeah. I got that. I filmed that, and then on the set of filming that, I found out I got the recall for Corrie
Ah,
on the.
great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's how that kind of lined up.
I said earlier I was having a little bit of a look on your TikTok earlier, and I saw that you'd put a picture of a little 5-year-old Luca on the set of Coronation Street on the Rovers Return set tour. Did you grow up in a Corrie watching household?
I did indeed. My grandma, my granddad used to watch it. My dad watched it. So I was brought up on the Pat Phelan. That was sort of my era of
Brilliant.
Corrie.
Love Pat Phelan. He's the best.
What a villain. For me, obviously I don't know any other, well, I know other villains, but he's the one that just rings in my head.
Mhm.
Watching him, such a good villain.
That was a really great little period of Coronation Street there when he was the bad guy for all those years.
Mm,
Brilliant. So you'd spent all those years watching Coronation Street. Do you remember what it was like stepping onto the cobbles on your first day at work there?
vividly, vividly. It was the first ever scene I did was a non-speaking scene,
Mm.
and thank goodness me, it was a non-speaking scene because it's you'll know what it's like when you go, you know, you do your first tour, I guess.
Yeah.
It's you like you're stepping into the telly, and then there's a camera crew there, and then it's like, oh my goodness me, I shouldn't be here. How have I done this? How have I blagged this? Um, it, you just got words cannot describe the feeling. It's such a weird, strange, beautiful feeling that you just I don't know. My head was gone. My head was so gone. Thank goodness me, I had no lines.
Yeah. Were you just glowering on that first scene, looking
Yeah,
menacing?
something like that. Something like I was um sort of messing around with Liam and Dylan
Mm.
because we used to be mates initially, so I was just sort of shoving them about, just sort of messing about
I
the
think I
bus
remember
stop.
that was on the street, wasn't it? It wasn't like a school scene.
Yeah, it was on the
Right.
street.
Yeah.
Tyrone was in it, and he sort of walked past, and then if I remember, Cassie threw a line at me about, "What are you looking at?" Oh no, or it might have been Hope that said that. I can't remember, but they would get Cassie was giving me evils, and then Hope was, "What are you looking at?" or something like that.
So did it take you long to shake that feeling of being the new boy?
It did, to be honest.
Yeah.
Just because it's an institution, it's such a. I think if I'd gone into something like, I don't know, like Emmerdale or something that I hadn't watched, I think it would have been a different thing. But it's so unique in what that does to you when you've watched it as a kid for so long.
Sure, sure. Did you start around about the same time as Callum Lill, who we also just said goodbye to in the role of Joel?
Yeah, I started in the summer. I started filming in the June time of 2023.
Hmm.
So I don't know to be
I think
honest.
he first appeared on screen around the same time as you, and so it's kind of funny that
Mm.
your exits almost aligned, and you were part of his exit in a small way as well.
Yeah, yeah. I had a little say in the suspects list. Yeah.
Did you have many people coming up to you to say that they thought that you were the one that bumped him off?
No, no. Let's be real. Nobody thought it
Bit of
was
a
me.
red herring, that one, wasn't
It
it?
was a little bit, wasn't it? It was never gonna be me, really.
So you've spoken a lot about learning from some of the other cast members on Coronation Street, and obviously with it being your first TV job, there must be so much to take in. And what would you say you learned most from your time working on the show?
I think in terms of acting or in terms of
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think I think acting wise, well what I do is after every scene I have a book, probably about like this thick, and I'd write down all my notes from how I thought that scene went and what I could do going forward. And I think the one thing that I found was to just let go, relax and listen. Do your prep at home and just be responsive in the moment and follow your impulse. And I know a lot of actors say that, and it sounds quite cliche, but initially I was so contrived. I tried to control the performance so much. I was so stiff that I had to say the line like this in this manner and then go up at this manner and do this look at, but just to relax a little bit and listen. And I think that's what creates reactive and real impulses.
Hmm. Did you watch yourself on the TV? Because I know some actors can't stand to watch themselves, and others like to watch to kind of see how it looks on the other side of the screen.
I found it invaluable personally. I hated it, and I still do hate it. I hate watching myself, but I force myself to do it because it's act for me personally. Acting without watching it back is like acting into an abyss. It's you don't really recognize what you're doing unless you can sort of get some feedback as to how that looks.
Sure.
And for me, it was invaluable because you learn a lot of nervous tics you do, and you learn, um, I'd analyze and write down and annotate every scene I do and write what I thought worked, what I thought didn't, and I still do. So just a lot of scrutiny, which can sometimes cause some self-consciousness. But I think that the self-consciousness is outweighed greatly by what I've managed to tweak.
It's been really interesting being able to hear about your time on Coronation Street and everything you've learned over the past year and a half. What is in store for Luca Toolan in 2025?
Um, I want to carry on acting. I love this job. Any agents watching, any casting directors, this could land on any of their desk. I'm here. I'm looking to just emailing casting directors. My agent's been great in that, helping me out. Just trying to get my name out there, trying to get auditions, trying to be seen for stuff. And, past that, it's in God's hands. Just get me seen on tape. And that's all I can really ask for.
Well, Corrie's a pretty good springboard, and I think with that episode last week, you really made a great impression. So best of luck to you. I really hope that there's some great stuff coming for you in the pipeline.
Thank you very much, Michael.
It's been lovely speaking to you today, Luca. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I've loved hearing about your journey and about what it was like filming those scenes. That episode left such a great impression, and I hope our listeners have found it interesting, finding a bit about how it all worked.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on and allowing to explain and a peek behind the curtain.
No worries. Well, best of luck for the future, and I will let you go. So, bye bye.
See ya.